Can a clean and simple card still have lots of personality? Well, today I'm combining a sweet giraffe die cut, a fun nested pattern background, die, and a delicate sentiment to create a card that's simple, playful, and full of charm. After experimenting with lots of color and texture lately, I found myself craving for a cleaner design. So I'm reaching out for some beautiful products from the latest Simon Says Stamp release to create a card that's easy to recreate but still makes an impact. Hello everyone, I'm Revati and welcome to my crafty space. Let's get started. All the products I'll be using today are from the Simon Says Stamp's latest Always There release. It's a beautiful collection filled with so many inspiring products, and I'll be sure to leave a link in the description box below if you'd like to take a closer look. For today's card, I'll be featuring three products from this release, starting with the adorable Fable Giraffe die set. This die lets you build the most adorable little giraffe. The set includes everything that you need to assemble him, from his sweet little face, a signature long neck, to his wobbly legs, playful spots, and tiny squishy tail. The pieces are cut using two dies, making assembly quick and easy. Our giraffe is going to be the main star of the project today and will serve as the main focal point of the design. Next, we have the Sparkler Scallop Frame Dies. Now, this nesting die set cuts rectangle panels with beautifully scalloped edges, giving your projects a soft and decorative finish. The set includes six dies in total, and it even comes packaged on this handy magnetic sheet to help keep everything organized. What makes these dies especially unique is that there is an embossed partial starburst design that is built into each of those scallop frames. The pattern radiates towards the outer edge of the panel, which will help add subtle texture and just the right amount of visual interest without overwhelming your design. For my sentiment, I'll be using the Timeless Love die. I absolutely love the font on the sentiment. It's elegant, delicate, and works beautifully for a variety of different card styles. The set includes two dies, one that cuts out the word itself and the other one which creates the coordinating shadow layer. For our card today, I'll be keeping things simple and using just the word die. I'll start by working on our focal point image, which is that adorable little giraffe. I went ahead and die cut all the pieces from white cardstock, and well, rather than cutting them from colored cardstock, I thought it would be fun to add color with some ink blending. This gives me a lot more control over the shading and allows me to add a little extra dimension for those tiny details. Once I had all my die cut pieces, I placed them onto my ultra sticky mat to keep everything secure while I worked. Now, since some of these pieces are quite small, especially the face area, having them held firmly in place makes ink blending so much more easier. For the coloring, I started with Sunbeam and Citrine as my primary yellow shades, blending them together to create a soft, warm base color. Then, once I was happy with the yellows, I brought in a touch of Cantaloupe, which is that very subtle orange, around some of the edges and areas where I wanted a little more depth. That subtle hint of orange adds warmth and gives the giraffe a more natural dimensional appearance without making the coloring look too heavy. By combining these shades, we end up with a sweet, cheerful little giraffe that's full of character and ready to take center stage on our card. I bought in one more shade, which is blush. Now, using a very light hand, I added just a touch of the soft orange pink color to the lower portions of the ear and around the nose. It's a subtle detail, but it adds a bit of warmth and personality to the giraffe, making those features stand out while keeping the overall look soft and sweet. After I was done with that, I continued going back and forth with the yellow and orange inks, gradually building up the color until I was happy with the blend. Taking the time to layer these colors this way creates a much smoother transition and gives the giraffe a little more depth and dimension. Of course, you could also die cut all these pieces from very light yellow cardstock and then add a bit of shading on top. That's a great way to speed up the process, but I personally prefer starting with plain white cardstock. It gives me complete control over the final look. And I can build up the color, shadows, and dimensions as I go. Sometimes I end up with a soft, subtle blend, and other times I add a lot more contrast. It really depends on my mood and where my creativity takes me while I'm making a particular project. Now, once I was happy with all that beautiful ink blending, it was time to bring some life to our little giraffe. The die includes etched details on the facial features, so I used a black gel pen to add tiny black dots for the eyes. It's a very small detail, but it makes such a difference. As soon as those eyes were added, the giraffe starts coming to life and takes so much more sweeter, more expressive personality. Once all the pieces were colored and ready to go, I used a little liquid glue to adhere everything together, carefully lining up the layers as I assembled the giraffe. The die is designed beautifully so the pieces come together quite easily, and before long, our little giraffe is complete. Well, I have to say, I absolutely love how adorable he looks. The soft ink blending adds so much more character, and those tiny details really bring him to life. Now, if you'd like, you could also add a little extra sparkle. You could also use tiny black gemstones or even small sequins for the eyes. That little touch of shine would make the giraffe even more playful and expressive. Don't forget to add his squishy little tail. I had also die cut the tail from that same white cardstock, so I went in and added some soft brown shading using mocha and woodsy inks to match the natural tones of the giraffe. To attach it, I added a tiny drop of liquid glue on the end of the tail and used a reverse tweezer to hold it in place. Now, the reverse tweezer makes handling these small little pieces so much more easier and gives you a much better control while placing them. Then I simply adhere the tail behind the giraffe, and just like that, he feels complete and even more lifelike with that little final detail. Isn't he absolutely adorable? I bought in the blush ink and added just a touch of shading to his cheeks to give him those sweet little rosy cheeks. It's a small detail, but it really enhances his expression and makes him look even more charming and full of personality. With that, our focal point is now complete, so I'll let this adorable little giraffe aside for a moment and move on to our background. At first, I was thinking of creating a full little scene with clouds and grass, but then later I decided to keep things much more simpler and let the design stay clean and elegant. So instead, I die cut a panel using a kraft cardstock as my base. For the background, I used the Sparkler Scallop Frame Dies to create a layered die cut panel. The set includes six different frames, so I chose the second largest frame because I wanted to keep a nice, generous border around the framed focal area. This gives the design a beautiful balance while still keeping the giraffe as the main focal point of our entire design. For my sentiment, I die cut the word love using the timeless love die. I chose to cut it from black cardstock for that bold contrast against the softer tones in the rest of the design. To give it more presence and dimensional look, I die cut the word twice and stack the layers on top of each other using liquid glue. This simple step really helps the sentiment stand out while also making it sturdier on the cut front. I absolutely love the font on this die. It's so stylish, elegant, and beautifully balanced. It fits perfectly with the overall feel of the design and ties everything together in a really cohesive way. Instead of placing the giraffe over the sentiment, I decided to get a little more creative with the composition. So I positioned him so that his legs actually intertwine with the word itself, almost as if he's interacting with the sentiment rather than sitting on top of it. This helps integrate the giraffe into the design in a more intentional way, making it feel like the sentiment and the focal image belong together as one cohesive element. It's a simple design choice, but it really adds charm and a bit of storytelling to the overall card. To complete the sentiment, I chose the word you from the label Love and Friendship stamp set from a previous release by Simon. Now, since this is a larger sentiment, I decided to mask off the rest of the phrase so I could isolate the word you. I carefully positioned everything in my stamp wheel and stamped it using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Now, this gave me a crisp, rich impression that pairs beautifully with the die cut love, helping the full sentiment come together in a very clean and cohesive way. The reason I chose this particular sentiment stamp is because I wanted the word you to stay very simple and understated, especially since the die cut love already has such a beautiful and expressive font. Keeping the stamp sentiment clean and minimal helps balance the overall design, allowing both the elements to complement each other without competing for attention. It creates a nice contrast between the bold dimensional die cut word and the soft simplicity of that stamped word, you, bringing everything together in a more harmonious way. I stamped the sentiment twice to make sure I got a really crisp, clean impression. Since I was working with a pigment ink, I also had the option to add clear embossing powder for a glossy, heat embossed finish. That would have given the sentiment a nice shine, but I decided to keep things simple this time and leave it matte. I really like how that soft, clean finish keeps the focus on the overall design and maintains that understated elegance in the card. Now, all that's left to do is bring everything together and assemble the pieces into a finished card front. At this stage, it's always so exciting to see the design come to life as each element finds its own place. I'll carefully layer and adhere the background, position our focal point, and finish by adding the sentiment so everything feels balanced and cohesive. This is where all the individual details come together to create a complete polished card design. I adhered both the sentiment and the focal point using liquid glue, taking my time to make sure everything was aligned perfectly before committing it to the design. Now, once I was happy with the placement and all the edges looked nice and straight, I went ahead and adhered the entire panel onto my white side folding card base. Since this is a fairly simple card design, I decided to add a bit of extra dimension by using foam tape on the card panel. It instantly lifts the design and creates a subtle shadow, which I absolutely love against the kraft cardstock base. I also really like how that clean white border frames everything so beautifully. It gives the whole card a finished look while still keeping things soft and minimal. For some final touches, I bought in a glitter brush pen and added a little bit of shimmer to the black die cut sentiment, just to give it that bit of a sparkle when it catches the light. Well, at this point, you could have also swapped out your sentiment for some black glitter cardstock for a similar effect, but the brush pen keeps it flexible and controlled while still adding the touch of shine. And for just the final touch, instead of my usual sparkle mix, I added a tiny red heart next to the giraffe to complete the design. It's such a simple addition, but it brings a lovely pop of color and a bit of charm to the overall composition. I absolutely love how this card turned out. It feels clean, balanced, and full of personality while still keeping that soft and simple style. This is exactly my style of card making, which is creating beautiful, clean, and simple card designs. I hope you enjoyed watching today's video and got inspired. Don't forget to check out the Always There release by Simons Stamp. I will leave a link to the entire release as well as links to the products that I used to create this particular card down in the description box below. Please note that all of those links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe.